The past 3 years have been absolute torture because of the sudden violent death of Sonia. No parent should have to bury a daughter. No 3-year-old should have to visit his mammy's grave. We told him that his mammy was now an angel in heaven, but he was inconsolable and his young mind was plagued with questions. He cried for his mammies most nights and was worried that this bold man would hurt him. Even if you say, like, oh, you know, like the girl that was killed in the Plaza Hotel, everyone goes, oh yeah, they don't remember the names. Like, the names are just forgotten.
Remember when she was 2, I had these 2 little pigtails sticking out of her hair, like, because I just wanted her to have long hair, you know.
She just wanted what everyone wanted, a happy life, a family, kids. We would have been really close growing up as kids and then even into teenagers. And then obviously that bond grew closer when we both had children.
Oh, she was a brilliant mum. Like, she'd do anything for Jake. Like, her whole life evolved around Jake.
Christmas morning, everyone comes to my house. All the kids open their presents and we had a great time. And then Christmas night, we went to my dad's. Stephen's Day, we went to my mum's. But we'd always just, like, there's lots of pictures of us. We were all together with my mum's, all lying on the couch after dinner, just eating sweets, the usual. But yeah, that was kind of our last Christmas. She met Eric through work. She said he seemed nice. They were going to go on a date. I think he'd been to our house 1 or 2 times, and then he'd bought her tickets for a comedy show in town. She was literally chatting to someone out in the smoking area, and he came out. And he started shouting at her, saying, like, what are you doing? You're a slut. You're, you know, why are you doing this? Why are you talking to people?
And he grabbed her by the arm. And she says to him, take your hands off me. She says, you're a psychopath.
Straight away, Sonia's seen red flags, and she was like, no. She was like, I will never let that happen. I have to protect myself, I have to protect my child.
The things that we should be looking out for if we're trying to assess whether somebody might be a problem to us in a relationship, anybody that tries to control anything you do. And when you first meet somebody, you might think that control is because they love you a lot, or they'll say, oh, I get so jealous because it's because I love you so much and I've never really felt like this before. Red flag.
They worked together, so it wasn't that easy for her to just be like, I'm done, you know, I don't have to see you again. She still had to see him. So in work, things had kind of started to escalate.
He rang her and said that he was in the hotel in Newlands Cross and he's going to hang himself if she didn't come up. And I said to her, no.
I said, he's trying to manipulate you. If he was going to do that, he wouldn't be texting it and telling you he's going to do it. He would just go and do it.
When the guards got there, they found him in the Milk Shopping Centre having a cup of coffee. He said it was just a joke.
When you have a trigger, so they've just, for example, heard, I'm leaving you, I'm done, I've had enough. The next stage is the response to that. Things will escalate. They're trying to reinstate the relationship, or they're trying to punish the person for leaving them.
I think because he couldn't get her to the hotel that day, I think that's why he went ahead then and made friends with her on this fake profile.
On that Facebook profile, Sonia thought she was talking to Shane Cully. It became quite intimate, I suppose, risque, the banter, very quickly. And very quickly they had decided that they were going to meet.
She was lonely. You know, she said that she was lonely, like she loved to be with someone, loved to be in a relationship, loved to have a family.
Her friends had actually said to her, are you sure it's not Eric? And she said the thought had crossed her mind. And so she asked the person, Eric Locke, who was pretending to be Shane Cully, to send her a selfie of himself, and he did, and so she was satisfied. So she was taking, you know, the precautions that she could to ensure that this was a sincere and authentic person.
I think he couldn't handle that someone was rejecting him. And he thought, well, she's not going to leave me and go off with someone else now. He wasn't going to have that.
When I grew up in the 50s, all my mother would ever say is to see Mary there, she has it hard with him. That's the only phrase I ever heard, but it was about several women that she knew. She has it hard with him. That's all it was said. But now people are talking much more about it and recognizing that the life of the woman within these relationships is controlled day and night.
As far as I knew for sure, it's not him. How can I be better?
Over the period of the 30-odd years, how did he manage to manipulate you so that you were, I'm not saying content, but you didn't see any option but for to stay?
He started to punish the children when Mum stepped out of line.
I see.
He beat my eldest son. I got up one Saturday morning just to have a cup of tea on my own, but I broke the golden rule. I left the bed before he was ready for me to leave the bed. He expected sex that morning. My son got a smack across the face.
Right.
That was so shocking. And the second time was a welt on his back.
What rights did you have in the bedroom?
I realised then none.
None.
None. There was no saying no. There was no being allowed to. But was I punched or hurt? No.
Okay.
But I knew that life wouldn't be worth it for the children if Mum didn't comply. And I was silenced, and the deed carried on. My reason for not getting out was the kids didn't think it was an option.
Sure.
They couldn't leave, so I couldn't leave them.
Okay.
That's why I didn't leave. And it was just when they became desperate, we all ran, we did it.
I was born in the late 50s, grew up in the 60s. I suppose I had a middle class background and a rural background. Grew up on a farm, come pub. In the 60s, there was a big sea change in thinking around equality and people's rights. And I grew up with that kind of expectation that I would be entering a marriage that was equal, that I had a say, that I had opportunities and freedoms and choice. And I remember being very, very shocked when my first child was born, where his behaviour changed very radically and visibly so. I remember him deciding that I was breastfeeding the child, that the child wasn't getting enough milk, and that he'd have to give the child cow's milk, which is not something you give to a newborn baby. And he just pushed me out of the house and he locked the door. And I was standing there and I was thinking, what on earth is going on here?
Pregnancy can be a very particular point of vulnerability. In a relationship, it creates an added dependence, so it locks somebody into a relationship more. Also, it can be maybe a distraction in terms of the needs of the abusive partner, being attended to exclusively. And unfortunately, we do see that where physical violence is perpetrated against pregnant women, it is often also targeted, quite distressingly, towards her abdomen, so against the unborn child as well.
You try to understand in your own head why somebody would behave like that. And there is no explanation, so you have to go, fatherhood is obviously very stressful for him. This must be a reaction to the responsibility, and you make up all these excuses. When I was pregnant with my second child, I was no longer working. We had moved to a very rural community and I had no access to money and I lived in the middle of nowhere. I had no access to a car. I had no access to friends. This all happened in the 80s. I have no idea what music happens in the 80s. I have people tell me, oh, that's an 80s song, or that happened in the 80s. We had no television. We didn't have a phone.
Sometimes people say, well, why doesn't she just leave? I mean, my first response is, why does he do it and why doesn't he stop? In terms of extracting yourself from an abusive relationship, it's just not that straightforward. The tactics of an abusive relationship are designed to make it hard to leave.
My partner at that point had decided that I was no longer going to go shopping. He would do the shopping, I would write the list. This is the only time I left the house. I was 8 months pregnant at this point. He assaulted me. He punched me really hard in the stomach. There was a line crossed that I could not ignore or justify or excuse or anything else. So we had a Honda 50. I made my way to the local town. I was devastated. And then I looked down the street and I thought, well, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go here? There was a phone box over to the left and I thought I can ring somebody. I had a couple of quid, that's all I had. And then I thought, who will I ring? And I thought I'll ring my parents, and I thought I can't ring my parents. They won't understand this from Adam, and they're the other side of the country. And I realised I had nowhere to go, and I had no help. I think that feeling has stayed with me all my life. And so I went home. And two neighbours walked in. They heard me screaming. Those two old men arrived at the door going, what the hell is happening here? And they came in and he had his hands around my throat. What sparked that is, I asked him to change the gas cylinder. And it didn't suit him. And I was trying to say, we need to cook the dinner. That's what sparked that particular incident. You know, there is an assumption that a normal person would be terrified having an experience like that. But if you have had physical attacks and assaults with the frequency I had, you don't get into that kind of place of, it's just another thing. What made that different was two neighbours, two old men stood at the door and said, stop it. That touched me, deeply touched me. The guards came. He met the guards at the door, perfectly pleasant, and told them, no, nothing to see here, nothing has happened here. And they asked to see me. I, of course, was in complete shock, went to the door and went back to the bedroom, and that was the end of that. That child in 11 months was dead. She was a cot death. I do have a rural background and I love nature. And that was one thing that I got a lot of solace from. There was a lake near us and there were mute swans. They were the things that helped me cope. After she died, I thought I can cope with this. And if I can cope with this, looking in a coffin at my dead child, surely I can cope with leaving him.
I said, oh, have a good night and I'll talk to you tomorrow, and walked away. And it's like, you always look back and go, why didn't I say more? Why didn't I tell her I loved her? Why didn't I say this? But obviously, you never know that that's going to be the last time that you're ever going to see, like, your big sister, do you know?
The next day, my mum rang and said, like, Jake's nanny's after ringing. Sandy's not answering the phone. She hasn't come to collect him. And it's weird, because it wouldn't be like her. She'd always wake up, ring and say, oh, I'll be there in an hour.
And I said, Claire, something's wrong. Something's wrong. She kept saying, Mum, don't keep saying that. And I said, no, Claire, something's wrong. She wouldn't switch her phone off. I said, her phone's ringing out, her phone's ringing out. Claire says to me, Mum, I'm on my way up to you.
And then Keith looked on Facebook and it said that the body of a 30-year-old woman was found in the Plaza Hotel.
So Claire says, come on, we're going to the hotel. I said, Claire, that's Sonia. And she kept saying, don't say that. And I said, it is Claire. I know it's her. So when we got there, they wouldn't let me see her. I says, please, just let me see her. Just please let me see her. Says no, and I says to Claire, he done this. I said, he, and Claire goes, who? And I says, Eric Locke done this, and she says, yeah.
I rang a couple of our friends, and then one of the girls I worked at, she was going to meet a guy called Shane Cully last night, and I was like, what? I went on Sonia's Facebook and I could see she made friends with this page, and I said, this is who she was meeting. Her friend in work said she was going to meet him. So they were like, okay, we'll obviously look into that. And then they came and told us, I think around 9 o'clock, that Eric Locke had walked in and handed himself in to Store Street Garda Station.
Something changed in that we moved to town and I did start working again. And those two things were great changes for me. They really, they opened up, well, first of all, I had some money, not a lot, because it contributed nothing to the house. All my wages now were going to support the family. I never knew what he earned throughout the marriage, ever. I was in bed with my third child and he thumped me just out of nowhere because his socks weren't organised properly in the drawer. The baby started crying and I thought, this is ridiculous. This would be another seminal moment where I am leaving him in my head. I suppose the start of the process was actually telling my friend what was happening, and we made plans. The particular day he was working, so he was not going to be back until 5 o'clock. So we prepared a Dear John letter, you know, I'm leaving and this is the end of the relationship, and that was left on the mantelpiece. My brother and his girlfriend were coming to pick us up. My friend who had helped and another friend were going to monitor and keep track of what was going on. It was so unpredictable. Nobody could predict what he would do. There was going to be a need for quite a bit of intervention. All of that was to take place when I'd left the house, except he came home at 2 o'clock. The bags were upstairs, so he didn't know that I was actually planning to go until my daughter came home and she handed him the letter that was on the mantelpiece. I was there going, oh my God, oh my God. So he immediately, there was a thing of, you're not going anywhere. You are going absolutely nowhere. You're not leaving this house. This is not going to happen. At this point, he was walking around the house with a knife in his hand. And my brother and his girlfriend arrived, and it was put to him very clearly, I am leaving. In the end, it was a case of just get out and you know, I'm not even sure the bags came. Now that I think of it, it was just a case of leave. It was difficult for the kids. They had to leave their home. They had to leave the environment they'd grown up in. They had the relationship was gone. Their mammy and daddy didn't live together anymore. They were in a new city. They were, you know, in a new schools. They, you know, it was a very big change for them. And we were much poorer. I remember walking from Salt Hill to Newcastle, which is a substantial walk, to buy a ham hock because it was $1.50 over there. And, you know, so that would be, and they're the kind of decisions I was making at the time. The decisions to how we were going to survive. I think I had £15 a week for food for the 2 children and myself at that time. It was incredibly difficult, you know. I never regretted for a second leaving. I never in my mind again thought about going back at any point.
Survivors are some of the strongest women in the world. They're just incredible. What they have had to overcome while trying to protect children, while trying to put food on the table. It's a kind of strength that is not widely recognised because of the secrecy, really, that shrouds domestic violence and our justice system.
In court, they read out the text messages between the two of them, and when she was waiting there and she was saying to him, "How long are you going to be? I'm really nervous, I've never done this before." He kept saying, "Oh, I'll be there soon, leave a key, leave a key." And she kept saying, I don't want to leave a key. Like, just knock on the door, I'll let you in. And he kept persisting about the key.
He went into town, he said, and he bought a kit to overpower and dominate Sonia Blount when he got to the hotel room. In that kit was a Stanley knife, cable ties, and an imitation pistol.
Scary to think what she felt when he walked into that room. I'd say just pure shock. I don't think she had any idea it was him. He left a do not disturb sign on the door. He pre-thought that, he threw his phone away. You know, that's all to me, not someone that just snapped and just done this out of spite. Everything is thought about.
He said he wanted her to hear his account of his suffering, but really what he wanted to do, obviously, was make her suffer and ultimately to silence her.
Before it went to court, as far as we knew, he strangled her. We didn't know the ins and outs, so when we were in court, we were shocked to hear that he shoved something down her throat, he broke her teeth, because he'd done it with such force. So we didn't know that. But, you know, she really fought. She really fought for her life, and I don't know if that's good or bad, because you just think how much she struggled. You know, she did. She damaged his eye by scraping him. She fought as much as she could.
It was the quickest on record that a jury has ever come back in a murder trial. It was like 1 hour, 26 minutes.
I had 4 clients who, when I worked with them, they told me that if I died down, he'll have killed me. But all their 4 deaths were recorded as suicides. These women told me how it would happen to them even, and it did happen to them. And I remember a judge one time who gave this girl a barring order, and when she went back home, it was a Friday evening, and she ended up dead down the bottom of the stairs. And the judge rang me and she said to me, "Don, I know he killed her when she went home." And yet it was deemed an accident.
My life changed completely. I went back to college. I went and did women's studies. I specialised in violence against women. I did my research on it, I did my thesis on it, and I started working in the Women's Refuge. Anger is the backbone of healing. I've said this to you before, and it is. You know, it's always the one that will tell you that, you know, things are intolerable or things are not right. So where do we go next? I started as a trainer and then took on the role of coordinator. We have always been providing supports for women in Galway City and County. There is a second option of saying, I'm asking you again to respect my wishes and not text me.
It's the psychological abuse, the shifting goalposts, the not knowing, is it me? Have I changed? You know, Was I once more loving? Was I once more caring? Because the psychological abuse teaches her to blame herself and teaches her that it is actually her fault, the problems in the relationship. That can be very difficult to come out from that.
I think the whole purpose of this not having enough money to pay for your dependent children is designed to continue to financially abuse me. I was part of a very toxic, controlling relationship. He had no qualms in telling me that he wanted me basically dead.
Thank you.
If you're in a court in the larger towns, everybody's milling around in the corridors. There is no separate places. So for people coming, in to get safety orders, barring orders. So you are in the same space as the perpetrator. Solicitors are standing in the hallways negotiating. So it's hugely intimidating. But if you come to a rural area or small towns, very often there isn't even a waiting area. It's a difficult journey for any woman to make. And that's, again, coming back to the thing of court accompaniment. That's why it is a really important service.
I'm being punished. I'm being reprimanded, and I'm being punished by this man. Because A, I left him, and B, I stood up to him.
Good morning.
Good morning, Evelyn. How are you? Good, good now.
No.
That's one folder.
Are you ready?
I am. Had a late night now last night, running through everything again. I have a bill here for €1,400 for 3 kids going back to school.
And how are you with the representing yourself?
I'm not going to waste the judge's time. I will keep it very short and sweet. I do need this resolved. The cost of living is crippling me, and it's crippling trying to support the children. And I just can't keep going the way I'm going.
There are women who leave who say it was bad, but the poverty that I have walked into is as bad. And the poverty my children are facing is as bad. The relentless pursuits through the court, the ongoing control. It just does not stop.
At that time, I just thought, yes, this is the man for me. I'm going to engage probably within about 6 months of meeting. Well, we didn't get married then for another 2 years after that. I qualified as a secondary school teacher. I taught maths and history for many, many years. I was also a Sinn Féin county councillor. Piers was in prison with a number of other political prisoners. They were in Castlereagh prison at the time. I knew lots of couples who did meet in those circumstances, who did go on to have long, healthy relationships. So it wasn't a flag to me. Got out in August 2009. Within a few months, there were concerns. I was being concerned about his drinking habits. When the children came along as well, I think things did change. Being the centre of attention was very important to him, and when he wasn't, there were problems. He actually threatened to smash a can of Coke in my face, and I was holding Noah, who was a year-old, in my arms. And that was very, very scary.
The reason why the couple stay together has nothing to do with her. The reason why they are together is because he persuades her over and over again that it would be better for her to stay. So repeatedly, she's re-groomed into forgive and forget, we'll sort it out, it won't happen again, all the usual cliches. But it is his skill that keeps her in there, not any decision that she makes. But we ask the wrong question. We keep asking, what about her? Why doesn't she leave, or why does she stay? The question is, how does he manage to get her to stay?
Everything in the relationship will be great at times, and then it just take a nosedive, and you're trying to think, is this normal? We were in Dublin for an event. My 2 children would be minded by his sister. That's the time he first actually hit me. He tried to choke me, and I kept screaming when I could, and I also hit him with one of my shoes. 2 couples who happened to be walking by, going to their own room, heard, and one of them came back and they knocked on the door and said, what's going on in there? Only for them. Like, I don't know how it would have ended, because he did stop and he did open the door, and I got out, and they supported me then to get me out of there.
If somebody is strangling you in any context, sexual or otherwise, in your relationship, get out. It raises the risk of homicide by 700%.
After that, I got a bar order. A few months later, we got a judicial separation. And I thought we were getting on okay, and that we would be able to be there for the children, but not together anymore. And but unfortunately, then the event on Christmas Eve happened then.
I didn't come out with what I had intended on achieving. Degree of anger, injustice. Yet again, another failure to deal with. I ended up with a con artist. I ended up with the greatest manipulator. I know what he's capable of. It's just unfortunately the guards and the judicial systems don't seem to realise what he is capable of. And the reason I know what he's capable of is because he's done it to me.
It's solid, so you can't see out. So I opened the door, but it was Pierce. The next thing, he just came around and punched me. I can remember his fist coming for me, like it was kind of like high. And my head hit back against this mirror. And I obviously put up my hand without even realising it to protect myself as well. And my finger ended up out at this angle here. Our 2 children were standing on the stairs looking at this. They were just so shocked. He had tracksuit bottoms on him, and he opened the pocket, and it was a knife. He ordered me into the kitchen. I know I was standing in the kitchen when he came over, and he just stuck the knife in here. And I got such a shock. I could hear air coming out, there was blood coming out. I did try and hit him with the kettle. I was conscious that there were larger knives in the kitchen, and I just didn't want to think of even trying to use one of those in case he would use it on me then. They ended up here on the floor. And I know several times he was, he'd be sitting at the bench there talking down to me, and I was sort of sitting, lying on the floor here. And every so often he would come over and try and cut my throat. And he did stab me several times. I lost count of the time, 2, 3 hours, I'm not sure. It just was an ordeal in the kitchen. He kept saying to me, like, would you just die? Why don't you just die? He would just come over, and so I would be trying to stop him. So my hands ended up all cut and that. There was a very deep wound here in my hand as well. It was actually, you could nearly, like it was gaping open, you know, and I had different wounds. But he'd just come over and just, you know, he'd be trying to stick me, just stuck me in the stomach, I think twice, once in the back, another time. And just, you know, trying to cut the throat, trying to saw at my neck. That's what he was trying to do. He called our sons down and told them to say goodbye to the mother. And then he sent them back up. They would have told me afterwards that when things were quiet in the kitchen, they thought I was dead. But when they'd hear me screaming again, they knew I was still alive. The thing he said to me, first of all, if I can't have you, then nobody else can. Because I even would have said, what are you going to do with the boys if you kill me? He says, I'll ring your brother Tommy to come get them and then I'll kill myself. That was what he said he was going to do. I have no way of knowing that. I mean, if he killed me, was he going to kill them too? I don't know. I didn't know at this stage how much drink, if any drink he had taken. I found out afterwards there was an empty bottle of vodka in the car, so he'd obviously drank that on his journey to my house.
Alcohol is a disinhibitor, but women who might talk about their partner having difficulties with alcohol or drugs, and you would ask them, well, when they leave the pub, you know, do they attack the bartender before they leave? You know, do they assault the taxi driver? Do they randomly, you know, assail people in the street? No. They wait, they get home, they close the door, and then they choose to act in a violent way. So it is often used as an excuse.
He started to drink this other drink that was in the fridge. I kept thinking, well, if he drinks enough, maybe he'll conk out. He lay down on the floor, and at that stage we started to get more melancholy, I suppose, and talking about, oh, how did it come to this? I kept thinking, I have to try and get out of this. But I remember going through my head thinking, am I going to meet my parents today? You know, am I going to see this light or whatever it is that people say they see when they're dying? So am I going to experience what it's like to die? Am I going to meet my parents? So I know there were thoughts going through my head, but the biggest thing, I suppose, was if not going to see the children grow up. That was kept, you know, am I not going to see them growing up? And how are they going to be? I thought, please let them go to sleep, let them go to sleep. I'd lost a lot of blood and I was very weak, but I said, if I don't try and get out now, I'm never going to have another opportunity. So I actually shuffled out on my behind out to the utility room and out the back door. Managed to stop a car, and the driver was a neighbour, he lives local, and he said, my God, Polly, what happened to you? So I told him briefly, I said, look, it appears to stabbed me, and he says, I'll go get your brother. He says, get into the car. So I says, no, I'm not leaving because my two boys are still in the house. He took off to get help. I saw Pierce's car parked just above my house, so I went up and I got into it. And I just remember him coming out that gate and I was getting into his car. And I could see in the mirror he was coming, and I remember thinking to myself, I have to lock the doors. He got a huge stone out of the ditch beside it and he was coming over with it above his head to break the windscreen. Thankfully, at that stage, my brother arrived on the scene and a number of my nephews and the neighbour that had stopped. My brother hit him and knocked him down. Knocked him out, I think, actually, for a few minutes.
I think there is a myth that if you're in a domestic violence situation and you leave the situation, logically it should end, but it doesn't. For example, you're separated, you have children, you're never going to be free because you share children. But I'm determined to have a good quality of life, and I'm determined to move forward. And I can honestly say in a heart and a half, I was a victim. I'm not a victim, I'm a survivor, because I did get out.
That's what I would say to my 25-year-old self. While it looks as if it is hopeless and you are defeated and you are destroyed and you are devastated and you have given up any hope of being able to get rid of this relationship or even to understand this relationship, there is a completely different life beyond it.
Even now, I pick up my phone, almost ring Sonia, I haven't spoken to her today. Do you know what I mean? I'm going around cleaning and I'm talking, like, photographs on the wall, and I'm speaking to her, and I'm actually answering myself. Do you know what I mean? I'm talking to Sonia, but I'm answering myself. Then I kept saying, Trish, don't do that, you're going to send yourself mad.
I got guardianship of Jake. So that was important for us to make sure that we knew what was going to happen with Jake and where he was going to go. That was very important to us. So yeah, my house was the best option we felt, because I had 2 small kids and he could just slot in and have a family. He talks about it, but he used to say, I remember this about my mum, but he doesn't. He remembers the stories that we tell him and he thinks that's his memories. But now that he's getting older, he'll say, I don't remember my mum at all. You know, I don't remember her voice, I don't remember what she sounds like.
We still have so many questions that will never be answered. How much did she suffer in her final moments? What were her final words? Only 2 people know what really happened in that room that night, and Sonia's not here to tell her side of the story, as her voice has been taken away. Nothing can be undone. We will never have our beautiful Sonia back.
When anybody tells me I'm meeting up with this guy, I just do be like, oh God, like, are you sure? Where are you meeting him? Are you meeting him somewhere public? You know, make sure you tell someone where you're going. And that's the way it is for women, but men don't have to do that. It's different steps you have to take, I feel, for girls, which is wrong.
She's lying there and he's sitting in a cell all comfy.
Yeah. A lot of the time I think of just when we were kids and the things we did when we were kids. But I would rather think about her than think about him constantly and let that eat me up inside.
For the children, it's very scary going to school and they're telling their friends, oh, my daddy hit me, mommy.
What kind of life did he give her? What kind of abuse did she have to suffer?
He had installed the cameras in her house. He used to keep her like a captive.
And if you've been affected by any of the issues raised in this programme, please visit our support page virginmediatelevision.ie/helplines.